Welcome to French Press Friday here on Masters of the Musiverse. Today, I'm excited to speak with Jacob Steinberger. Thanks for being here, Jacob.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. Jacob and I actually haven't met before, but a post of his about this thing called the Fundamentals of Airfare showed up on a band directors group that I follow on Facebook. A lot of people do. It's a great thing. If you're not on it, go on it. Mm-hmm. I was one of the many people that loved this idea, and people were just asking you more information, give us more. And I thought, let's get you on here and let's talk about it. Before we do that, let's just do some background on you and get to know you a little bit. So tell me, you teach at Marlow Junior High, and is it Macomb, Michigan?
Yeah, so it's close, Mallow, Mallow. Mallow, and yeah, it's in the Macomb Township, Shelby Township area. It's one of the larger districts in the state of Michigan, which is cool. We have something like 4 high schools, 8 or 10 junior high programs, which if you're not familiar with the junior high program, it's a program that's 7th through 9th grade. And then, 22 elementary schools. So just
wow,
a very, very large district for sure. Yeah.
So tell me about your job. You talked a little bit about the grade levels you teach. What ensembles in those grades?
Yeah. So, currently I teach a 7th through 9th grade program. And as of this year, this is the first year where our 7th grade is our beginning band kids. So we're no longer teaching at the 6th grade level. So we have ensembles that include our beginning ensemble, our concert ensemble. We just started an after-school jazz program. And because of the junior highs ending in 9th grade, our 9th graders can go over to the high school and join the high school marching band for a 9 through 12 program. So I also have a hand in that. I do have some younger musicians who are all about rock music, so they keep pushing this year to see if I will start a rock band for them. But that's pretty much the gig. I do teach outside of that though, for sure.
Yeah. How long have you been teaching?
Well, so it's a little weird. So like I graduated from Michigan State University, go Green, beat Michigan this week. And I graduated in the fall, so I had to wait a couple months to get started. I taught in a private school for a long-term sub gig that led me to a private school, or sorry, a public school for 3 years, and had a couple things outside of the country in the summer, and then back in and back and forth. And so this is technically my 3rd full year this year. But I would say I've been probably teaching and substituting and long-term subbing for 4.5, 5 years altogether.
Okay. Yeah. So I didn't go to a big university. I went to a small school, and sometimes I feel like I missed out because I could just see that pride as soon as you start talking about Michigan.
Oh yeah.
And in the pre-interview, I brought up Ohio State University, and I saw a different side of you. You weren't too happy about
it. It's so unfair too, because like truly, if we were talking music, Ohio State's music program, phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
Just amazing. And their marching program, phenomenal, and their football. I don't know, like from being born, you're just ingrained with this. You don't like Ohio State. It's okay if you're Michigan or Michigan State, but like no matter what, you don't like Ohio State.
So think about your first year teaching.
Okay.
And even maybe your first few years too, your first couple years. If you could go back and speak to yourself, what advice would you give?
Oh man. I genuinely, and I had a bit of an accident recently last year during the COVID year. I fell off a cliff and punctured a lung and like popped the lung.
Oh my.
And so I would honestly say, and that has been actually wonderful for me. So as scary as that sounds, it was actually one of the best things that's ever happened. Because if I could go back and talk to myself from 3 years ago when I first started teaching, I would probably like have a pretty honest conversation with myself to like quit trying to look 2 steps forward, quit trying to manipulate the trajectory of your future. Like no matter how hard you try, whatever happens is going to happen. And the less you force it, the more people will recognize your genuine self and investing time into your genuine self. I think maybe sometimes trying to weave my way around the crowds and get on the in with this crowd or this group of elite, if you would, might come off as having an ulterior motive. So I think I would have actually achieved more goals in the beginning, or been more happy and successful with the first couple of years of my teaching if I would have just been myself.
Did you feel like when you were teaching, you weren't yourself a little bit? Because I know for me that it took me a while to like be myself when I was teaching. I was too busy trying to be, this guy's successful, I'm going to be him.
Right.
She's successful, I'm going to be her.
Yeah.
Was it like that?
Yeah. Actually, I think it's a complexity of a couple of issues, right? So that one's huge, right? Like I don't know what it's like for your education, but like growing up, Texas was like you wanted to have an ensemble that was like in a Texas ensemble, right? So it was like, oh well, I want to do what they're doing, so I need to do X, Y, and Z. But at the same token, on that other side, it's like, well, I don't really know how to do that, and I'm not really good at these secondary instruments, so I'm gonna put them for next week, and I'll learn how to do those next week, and I'll help those kids next week. And it just became like this, falling domino effect of, putting everything off to the side. And then also when it comes to authenticity of oneself, I was with a district at the time where the kids were wonderful and the administration were super receptive of being genuinely myself, but the actual community itself didn't understand some of the methodologies that I was trying to put in place. So like one of the things was breathing through the form of meditation. And in the community that I was at, they thought meditation meant spirituality and trying to force something on their students. So it's kind of like, well, how do you be yourself? You teach what you want to teach based on your experiences and what will scaffold them to the right thing, but at the same time constantly pushed back with, no, you can't do that here, sort of situation. So I think definitely it's those three things for sure.
Yeah.
And now that I'm at a program where I have full control, full reign, and not to go back after I fell off that cliff, I was like, man, like you kept saying that you were going to get these things done and you were going to learn this instrument and read this book and do these things, and you haven't done it. Like, what are you waiting for? You could fall off a cliff. Like, who knows? Quite literally, that's what I did. So, it definitely this past year has been like, all right, who are you? What do you want to teach, and how are you going to teach it? And I have to say, this has been the most successful year of my teaching career thus far. As small as it might be, I've never like had a day-to-day basis just be like, yeah, that was a great day. That was just an amazing day. Super awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you'd go back in time and tell yourself not to fall off the cliff, but that's
no, that's actually, I strongly encourage everyone, fall off a cliff, not only because it'll help you learn about yourself, but all those breathing exercises you did, that's exactly how it should feel like. Yeah, you've been doing it right this whole time. You don't need to pop a lung, but if you want to feel it, you've been doing it right the whole time.
All right. So the thing that we are really here to talk about is the fundamentals of Airfare.
Yeah.
I think this is great, and I can't wait for more people to learn about this. So maybe just in general, and then we'll get to the specific things.
Yeah.
What is the fundamentals of Airfare?
Yeah. So the fundamentals of Airfare was just this random, the name is not really important, but it was this idea that my students are starting to learn how to breathe properly, pendulum their air at different speeds or whatever. But often when we put it into context and have like, I don't know, a brass player take their mouthpiece and try buzzing on it, or taking their instrument, they still weren't getting that full, rich, dark sound. They could breathe fine, but they couldn't put it in practice when you had back pressure, or if you were having like carbon dioxide resistance training. So all of these fundamentals of Airfare was supposed to be like, if I went to a carnival and I were to play carnival games at a fair, what games would I play at a fair? Oh, well, I would, you would see like the shooting galleries. Okay, well, how can we fit shooting galleries into a school appropriate connotation of music education? And I thought, oh, well, like one thing that they really struggle with is that pressure of tonguing their instrument and stopping there, but keeping the air going at that same time.
Yeah.
So thus came one of the games called the Sunflower Seed Spit Challenge. And we would take sunflower seeds and keep that air going and try to spit them at a target of some sort. So all of these activities have to deal with having some capacity of breathing that isn't just like, all right, we're going to breathe in for 4 and out for 8 and hope that we can make a good sound on our instrument, but kind of forces you to, I don't want to say force, that seems like very aggressive and it sounds like pinched off sound. But like, you know, it really helps open up that lung capacity for you.
Trains you to yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to talk about all the different things you do. And I've just got a list here. So, and if there's more than what's on this list, feel free to add. So the first thing is, I believe you have 5-gallon buckets full of water. What do you do with those?
Yeah. So we call them water wars or bucket wars. And yeah, I've even had one of those incredibly large containers that people bring to put ice and beverages in and put a tuba bell inside of it. But the idea of it is you take a brass instrument and you submerge the bell of the instrument only. Please do not just like throw instruments into buckets of water. It's not always good for them. But when they submerge their bell into the bucket of water, if then they start pushing air through the instrument, they have 2 things going on. One, they have to use enough air to get air out of the bell and through the water. So that's creating like a bubbles. But also, and this isn't necessarily great in practicality, but it does help overcome a different problem in the future. In order to dip your bucket or your bell down into the bucket, you kind of have to collapse your lungs. So you're again using more air to get an already hard process of air through the instrument, through the water. The only other thing with that is the water also has gravity pushing down on it. So it's trying to push up into the bell. So you have 3 forces that you have to oppose. And, you know, the students are going to get after it just because they like that the water splashes around. And they're going to try to use as much air as possible. So as soon as they take it out of the buckets and I go, okay, so that sensation you felt of pushing air through water, do it now with a relaxed sound. And I mean, honestly, you just have to hear it once and you're like, yep, like that every time. The next one, similarly to the buckets, was our balloons. And so I thought, well, what's a fair or carnival without some balloons? Actually, it was because, you know, I don't want you to dip your flute or your clarinet or your saxophone into a bucket of water. So we use balloons, and I got large enough elastic balloons. You can't really do it with small ones, where they can put it around the neck or the barrel of their instrument and then try to buzz a sound and inflate the balloon. Or I guess you could think of like one of those water guns where you shoot and it expands to the balloon and it almost pops kind of deal.
Yeah.
Same thing. The elasticity of that balloon is causing a back pressure of air against them. So they're fighting that resistance, which in turn, when they take the balloon off, will create this massive sound of vibration.
So you go right, like they try it on the balloon and then they put their clarinet together and they try to play on the clarinet. Do you do it immediately or?
I don't necessarily do full body immediately. This year especially, I really wanted to work on embouchure strength and just proper embouchure technique. So once they did the balloon or once they did the bucket, they take it out and they're only using their mouthpiece barrel or their or just their mouthpiece at their brass. Now, once you have a good embouchure sound and it's consistent, I'll go, okay, do the bucket, do the balloon, and put it together and see how much more air you need to make your instrument sound. And again, it really only takes one try because of how much resistance it puts. The only thing I'll say about the resistance, though, is if you have a brand new balloon, sometimes that elasticity is too strong, and
Yeah.
you need to blow it up a little bit, pinch it off with your fingers, and then complete the exercise. Or else you're just going to have frustrated kids and your eyeballs are going to pop out.
So there's another thing where you had some sour, like sour candies, I think it was.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, so this one wasn't an idea of mine. I found it on a YouTube video, but the idea was if we wanted to adjust reed embouchures for saxophones, clarinets, whatever it is, the muscles that you use to form that embouchure can be activated by eating something sour. So like this person on YouTube was like, hey, think of when you eat a lemon, what muscles do you use? And you did it. And I thought, well, okay, well, at a fair you would have treats. So let's bring in warheads and lemon heads and really sour things. And I have a band wallet full of memes. When you work with middle schoolers, you have to work with memes. It's just
Yeah.
nature of the thing. So we have what was called the Sour Selfie. And I had little pocket mirrors, or they could take their cell phone, go by the wall of memes. And when they ate it, they had to look at their mouth and really look and see, what am I feeling? What am I seeing? How are my lips coming in a little bit more to get that pucker. And what's crazy is I had a couple of kids who were flattening out, so they had these air pockets on the corners of their mouths right here. And as soon as they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's kind of sour. Okay, I don't like these lemon things, and would spit them out, go, all right, grab a drink of water, please rinse out your mouth. That same sensation that you feel, I want you to recreate it while playing it, and it fixes embouchure. It's the only one that's more or less has to do with embouchure, not necessarily air. But I
Yeah.
still thought it is relevant to the activity, to getting a good sound, which I think is the basis of it.
I've got a beginning saxophone player that has just been struggling, and I think I'm going to try that tomorrow. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, you know
I've been
what?
trying to find something that works.
It's like one of those baby videos. Like, just force them to eat a lemon wedge and just see them just pucker up, and you can have a laugh, they can have a laugh, and be like, all right, but that feeling that you feel, that those muscles you're moving now, yeah, activate those when you
Cool.
try it the next time. And it worked in my classroom, but teach their own, I guess.
You've already mentioned the sunflower seeds. Is there anything you'd add to it? Like, what did you use for targets?
Yeah. Well, so this is the first year I've waited to around the October time to start doing it. So I went to a dollar store and I got these felt. I got a mummy, a witch, and a vampire. And I just sticky tack them to a stand, put the stand outside the band room door because we have an exit to the outside world. And so they would stand in the doorway and spit sunflower seeds outside, not inside, not at each other. Very important classroom management. But the sunflower seeds is really for tonguing and air direction. So I teach a method of tonguing that I think is weird and unusual. I call it reverse tonguing. Again, it's one of these things that seems very impractical because you wouldn't actually use it when performing an instrument. But you start by blowing air and then stopping the air, like plugging up a drain, right? You're putting a cork in it. So it would kind of sound like this. I know we're on a podcast, so you can't see my face, but it would sound like this. And you could hear it stop, but I'm still pushing air forward. So we call that reverse tonguing. And then when I go, all right, keep your tongue out, start pushing the air forward, and then draw your tongue back in. And that's how you get that spitting technique. So again, if you start with the tongue out, push the air, and then pull your tongue back in, you'll get this. It's that spitting technique. So once they kind of have that idea, I go, all right, now take a sunflower seed and see, is your air going straight in front of you? Can you hit the targets in front of you? And are you tonguing properly? If you tongue properly, it's going to be a projectile that's going to shoot. If it's more of a, it's going to fall right down. And it becomes this idea of where now I'm teaching tonguing and air direction at the same time in a fun, desirable way for my students. And it's just not like, I don't know, it feels like it's a visual component too. Like they can see whether or not they're doing it based on the outcome of their sunflower seed.
Sure. Just so you know, there's actually a YouTube channel as well. So you
Oh,
some people will be able to see you.
welcome. I'm glad you get to see me in pink.
So all right. So then the next note I have, it just says bubbles, and I'm not too sure. So you might have to start that one from the beginning for me.
Yeah, so the final three of the Airfare on the day of are called bubbles, ping pong balls, and dollar dollar bills. And they all have to deal with air speed. And this was important for my flutes, especially to get just dollar store bubbles. And the goal is to get the most amount of bubbles as you can. And that's all I tell my kids. And that's because they'll realize if they blow too fast, they get one bubble, maybe, or it just sprays everywhere. If they go too slow, they get one giant bubble. So this really keeps a nice consistent airflow that is relaxed and at a good, decent speed to really get my flutes playing well. Also, it's not bad for my other wind players to do it. If we start introducing dynamics later in the year, especially for my beginners, we can talk about, hey, remember how we use airspeed to change the bubbles? Okay, well, now we're playing with bubbles in this music, and it's a good reminder, a visual reminder of what they want to do. The next one is the opposite. Instead of slow speed, is fast speed. And a lot of people know this technique, but this one was new to me this year. Ping pong balls. Take a ping pong ball, take a brass mouthpiece, put the ping pong ball inside the cup of the mouthpiece itself, and have your students blow from the shaft. So they're obviously blowing the backwards, but like if they blow fast enough air in quality air, you can actually sustain the ball in air as if you're like a wizard, like it's Harry Potter or something, and you're just keeping that ball up. And you know, you have to use a lot of air, so you're not holding it up very long, but it's definitely builds a lot of friendly competition among musicians. We're like, oh, I held that up for 2 seconds this time. Well, I held it up for 3. And then if it falls on the floor, then they are like catching it. It's really, really enjoying. So that's about fast airspeed.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I learned about that one. It is almost, I'm going to say it's impossible on tuba. Have you had success with tuba mouthpiece?
No, never, never.
Yeah, it's because it actually goes inside.
Right.
But they like to try it anyway, at least my kids. It works really well on trumpets, and trombone players can do it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I make my tuba players take a trombone baritone mouthpiece to get some semblance of that kind of deal. But no, I don't have very many tuba players, and the ones that I do were like, no, can't do it. So here's a trombone mouthpiece. The last one is the dollar dollar bill game. And I've used this technique before, just not with a dollar bill. I usually use like a small square piece of paper, like loose leaf that I just ripped up, and I'll take a coffee stirrer straw. And again, that's to get a nice circular aperture that they can push air through. And in a dollar bill or small square piece of paper is just heavy enough where you need to use a good amount of focused air to keep it up against a wall. So my kids will take a dollar bill, put it against a wall, start blowing air, let go of their hand, and use their air to keep the dollar bill up on the wall, or the piece of paper up on the wall. It becomes very fun and competitive. You'll often see kids start having really poor embouchure because they're just trying to get that last little bit, hold it just a little bit longer than, Sarah next to me kind of deal. But somebody gave me the idea of doing the dollar bill because sometimes people like to win games. And this game became, hey, in your class period, have a partner, time each other. Whoever has the longest timed thing can keep the dollar at the end of the hour. So they're like, money, it's only $1. And I was like, listen, that's a lot of money. Take it or don't take it kind of deal.
So when do you do this?
That's Airfare. Yeah. So this year, I did it there were 4 fundamental things I wanted my students to be able to do before we even touched our instruments. So we were doing rhythm, we were doing breathing exercises, which have been a game changer this year. learning note names without the constraints of having a staff. So we learned how to read music going upwards and downwards with having no lines or spaces, which was awesome. And then once we've gotten those ideas, we're starting to build embouchure techniques. So this is about a month into my year. Once they know rhythm and once they know how to breathe, so that when I build their embouchure, we can actually start using the air to project rhythms and really focus on just those embouchure techniques for sure.
All right. And the students like it? The
Dude,
airfare, they're
love it. Absolutely love it. Well, first of all, I mean, you come in and by a month of not playing their instrument, they're kind of like, dude, we need something. We need something here. And then they come in and they see sunflower seeds and candy and balloons and water buckets and all these crazy things. They're like, what's going on? And then they're like, so we get to go play games. Yeah, you get to go play games. Go play games and then come back and we're going to play more games. But you don't know you're playing a game. You're just playing music now. And it's getting what I want, and they're doing it in a lens of something that they enjoy doing. I can't think of many other classrooms where these games would really apply to it. So I can't think of a math class using sunflower seeds to project, unless if you're determining speed and velocity, in which class you might as well just be in your physics class.
right.
The only other thing that I would add that I think they love, and I know this sounds crazy, I know it's not on the Airfare because we don't do it during the Airfare. I've gotten them PVC pipes, 1/2-inch PVC pipes with shutoff valves, and they fully bite over it, and they either will have the shutoff valve completely open so it's free air in and out, or they can turn it halfway and create resistance for their breathing in and out. And that PVC pipe has really allowed them to do these games a lot more quickly and like understand that process a lot better of how to use their air a little bit more efficiently, for sure.
Okay. So when do you notice the benefit? Is it immediately? Does it take some time to set in?
I heard this educator from Texas once described, 85 and keep going. And I would say you would immediately take the instrument out of the bucket. 85% of those kids are going to have a huge loud sound immediately. And then there's going to be a couple kids who are the other 15%. And instead of leaving them behind, you either ask them to play the game again a day or two in a row until they really start getting the hang of it. Like I had a number of students who really struggled with the sunflower seed game. And so, it's just because they've never spit anything out at anyone before. So, it'd be like, all right, well, why don't you go back and you try this again? Like, it's fine. We've got time. We'll get it. So I would say, I think it's dependent on the user. I don't want to say, oh, it's 100% guarantee. Billy Mays here with OxyContin. But it's very, I think you'll see improvements within the first 5 minutes of you doing this.
Yeah. I imagine that these are concepts then that you can revisit, like middle of the year, sound is going a little bit. Hey, brass, do you remember that jacuzzi sound or that jacuzzi you made? Can you do that now while you're playing your instrument?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And we do that. That is a great point that was made. I'll often just go, hey, 9th graders, come on. Woodwinds, where are your balloons at? Blow up your balloon. Let's go.
Yeah.
And so I had them take out their balloon the other day. It was really funny. I was trying to do it with them just so that they didn't feel like I was making them do something that I couldn't do. And so we're blowing up this balloon, and I'm not talking like I blew this thing up. Like we're maybe getting to a quarter fill, and this thing just right in my face and just exploded. And they were just dying and dying, dying. Go, I swear, if you don't fill up your balloon so it explodes, you're not doing it right. And then sure enough, they're like, okay, put their balloons away, and it just boom. Yeah. So it works, yeah.
All right. So this is such a novel idea. Where did it come about? Like, have you pieced it together over a few years? Did it all come at once?
Yeah. I definitely picked this up along the way. I found that over the course of a few years, I needed a clearer sound for my students, and I wasn't a good enough educator or didn't really know how to like help some of my students. So I was definitely looking for ways to, how do I address this issue on a grand scale thing, but also like get them to understand it quicker, because I might not be the best for you on the oboe or on the bassoon. So like, how do I get you to make a good sound without me having to like spend a ton of hours doing it outside of school? And so over the years, after talking to educators and their tips, I kind of pieced it together. And then I was like, well, I have something for brass, the ping pong balls. How could I implement it for reeds? So like reeds can't use the ping pong balls, so just shoot them out everywhere. So I found myself trying to figure out ways that they could do something similar to that. And I think one of the biggest things, and I hate to go back to it because I don't want people to pity me, because I am in the best health I've ever been, but like truly falling off that cliff and popping my lung really forced me to research breathing techniques and strengthening exercises, and reading books like, The Talent Code, which a lot of people have read before, but like using that idea of like creating these hotbed or these solutions that aren't necessarily like traditional standards, like not something you would find in the classroom all that often. These unconventional ways has had huge success in my recovery. Why can't it help a person who doesn't need to recover, who's just learning to play music? And so the more reading I did, there's a book called Breath. I highly recommend anyone who's listening to this, check it out, Breath. It goes through the most wild things about breathing. It's super cool. And they, they talk about carbon dioxide buildup in the body. They talk about all these different breathing techniques that like Tibetan monks would use to like get these different levels of oxygenation throughout their body. And so it's all these things where it's like, well, I could do that with my kids. I can make them over oxidate and get all tingly and bubbly inside and be like, okay, bring it back to the ensemble now. Let's use that same amount of oxygen that we just produced to make music. And thus far, it's created the Airfare. And that's what it's become.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Jacob, thanks for joining me today. This has been a great conversation. I hope that we get to talk lots more. I'm sure you're going to have a lot more brilliant ideas here, so we'll stay in touch.
For sure. Well, thank you so much. Again, for me, I know we were talking before this podcast. I never thought I'd be on a podcast, let alone one talking about insane, unconventional ideas in the classroom. But just having people, even online in that band director forum, be remotely interested felt validating, but also like, hey, all those things that you were struggling with, okay, people are starting to notice that it can help them too. So yeah, it's nice to see that it's working for other people, not just my program, which is nice.
Yeah, so I'd tell any band director that's not on that Facebook page, I think it's one of the most helpful things, because you got a question about anything, you go there. Also, you can go there and look up the Airfare post that Jacob made, and you can see some pictures of his fair.
In the original post, there is a comment. If you scroll, if you can find my post, I shared a link to a Google Doc. It is free for anybody. It has an outline of all the lesson plans. It has images of it. The only thing I've not done yet is make YouTube videos for it. So use the images on that post, but also go to that Google Drive and take it, run with it, change it, make it fit your program.
Yeah, and just going to add to the encouragement of people of coming up with clever solutions that engage your students, think outside the box.
For sure.
And then my last thing here for everyone, if you take a moment, like this video, share it with somebody, follow the podcast. I'm on all the social medias. It helps with the YouTube and the podcast algorithms. I'm hoping someday to like turn this over and have the YouTube start paying out, because I then want to use that money to help educators in any way I can. So need your help to do that. Jacob, thanks so much for being here today, and everyone have a great day.